buried in a declassified CIA report is a chilling account straight out of a sci-fi thriller, a UFO encounter near Moscow where Russian soldiers were reportedly turned to limestone. We're going to break down the details of this bizarre Cold War era case, what was allegedly seen, and what the CIA had to say. You're going to want to stick around until the end because the final part of this report is hard to even comprehend. Welcome, everyone, to the Living Umpqua UFO UAP Rabbit Hole Show. This is a topic I wanted to get out there before my next video because it, quite frankly, is really quite shocking. If you have heard about this, it was a CIA document that was recently released. A couple of documents, actually, talking about a bunch of UFO phenomena that was going on in Russia. So this was a document the CIA got from a Russian intelligence report, who also cites some other journalistic sources. But there's some pretty interesting stuff in this first document I want to go over with you. And then there's some absolutely shocking things I'm going to go over in this second document with you. All right, so let's take a look. Here's the first document. As you can see, titled FBIS Foreign Press Note, dated 22 November 1989, USSR media report multitude of UFO sightings. Leading Soviet newspapers and journals have recently begun publishing an increasing number of articles and news reports on sightings of unidentified flying objects in various areas of the Soviet Union. A permanent center for the study of UFOs has been established in Moscow to conduct research and support the investigation of reported sightings. Setting the tone for this media coverage was an article in the 9 July 1989, I can't even pronounce that, which referred to many recent reports of UFO sightings in the USSR. Interviewed by the paper, Pete Prokopenko, director of a lab for the study of anomalous phenomena, stated that a permanent center for the study of UFOs is being established in the Soviet Union. In addition to conducting research and presenting lectures on UFOs, the center will support the investigation of reported sightings. So it goes on here in referring about a number of issues. A paper published in July 88 that included a report on an amazing event that took place on Hill 611 near the village in Dolnogorsk in Primorskiv Krai. The article noted that the event is still under investigation. Observers saw a flying sphere crashed into one of the hill's twin peaks, and physicists and other scientists from the Siberian division of the USSR Academy of Sciences are still studying the fine mesh, small spherical objects, and pieces of glass that are considered to be small remnants left behind by the sphere. Wow. According to the article, the alleged spacecraft was nearly obliterated in the crash, but there appears to be enough material at the site for the scientists, a mixture of UFO enthusiasts and skeptics, to eventually penetrate this mystery, quote unquote. So we get into some of the findings here in studying the site. Scientist A. Makayev reported finding gold, silver, nickel, alpha titanium, molybdenum, and compounds of beryllium. One of the skeptical physicists from Tomsk has hypothesized that the so-called sphere could have been some kind of a plasmoid formed by the interaction of geophysical force fields, which captured the elements found by Makayev from the atmosphere on its trajectory towards the disintegration of the hilltop. Other researchers have generally rejected this explanation since the amounts of various types of metals found at the site would imply, according to this plasmoid theory, that the concentration of metals in the atmosphere should exceed the present level by a factor of 4,000. Some of the scientists have concluded that the object that crashed into Hill 611 was an extraterrestrial space vehicle constructed by highly intelligent beings. Let's sit in for a moment. Doctor of Chemical Sciences, Vivayatsky, stated that, without a doubt, this is evidence of a high technology, and it is not anything of a natural or terrestrial origin. He cited the fact that the remnants of the mesh included bits of thin threads with a diameter of only 17 microns, and that these threads in turn were composed of even thinner strands twisted into braids. Extremely thin gold wires were discovered intertwined in the finest threads, evidence of an intricate technology beyond the present capabilities of terrestrial science, according to Vysotsky. 25 July 1989 reported that a UFO sighting had been claimed by engineer UFO Ponomarenko and a group of workers at a collective farm in the Dnipropetrovsk region. The object was described as a disc with two beams of light emanating from its sides. The witnesses maintained they had observed the object on the ground for about 20 minutes and that it emitted no sound when it flew away. The August 1989 issue of the Soviet journal Naka Azin included a 9-page article which, after summarizing the history of UFO sightings in general, contrasted some of the views of the skeptics with some of the opinions of the enthusiasts on numerous reported UFO sightings in the USSR, including incidents in Serpukhov, Petrovsk, and Rudnya. According to the enthusiasts, UFOs have left as evidence of their visits on many occasions, including the Serpukhov incident, in which they claim a UFO left a circular depression in the grass with a diameter of 4 meters. The skeptics maintain that most of this so-called evidence can be explained as having no connection with extraterrestrial intelligence. Many of the sightings could be attributed to rocket testing. For example, academician Vladimir Vasilyevich Magulin, director of the Terrestrial Magnetism, Ionosphere, and Radio Wave Propagation Institute, and Triotsk, which has a section for the investigation of anomalous phenomena in the atmosphere, maintains that over 90% of UFO sightings can be nullified by such mundane explanations. Well, that's not the ones we're here for, right? We are interested in the 10%. And a Gazette of September 1689 reported that in August, a group of observers, included physical scientist Elver Kachenko, began investigating an other circular depressed area in a forest near Surgut after a worker claimed that a UFO had visited the site. So you can see it kind of goes on here to mention different UFO incidents. This is pretty interesting. In response to this deluge of reports, the paper interviewed Anatoly Listratov, chairman of the section of the All-Union Astronomical and Geodesic Society assigned to the study of anomalous phenomenon, who said that although his group is still wandering around in the darkness, some important developments in the investigations have recently occurred. He stated that at the sites of the landings, the operating frequency of a crystal-controlled oscillator changes. Simply speaking, electronic timepieces run at the rates that are either too fast or too slow. Listratov noted that the Soviet military officers and pilots had recently started providing some documentation on UFO sightings. As an example, he stated that he had documentary information regarding an encounter between Soviet aircraft and a UFO over the city of Borisov. The crews of 2 Soviet aircraft reported seeing a large flying disc in their vicinity with 5 beams of light emanating from it. 3 beams were directed toward the ground and 2 were projected upward. When the object was first sighted, the ground controller instructed one of the planes to alter its course and approach the object, at which point the disc flew to the same level and aimed one of its beams at the approaching Soviet plane, illuminating the cockpit. Listratov cited the pilot's log as startling. At this time, the co-pilot was at the controls. He observed the maneuver that the object had just carried out and was able to raise his hand to shield himself from the unbearable light. The aircraft commander was resting in the adjoining seat, and a bright ray of light projecting a spot with a diameter of 20 centimeters passed across his body. Both pilots felt heat. According to Listratov, the aircraft commander and his co-pilot both became invalids shortly after the incident. Not sure what invalids means. In Russia, maybe that they can't fly anymore. Have to look into that. The co-pilot was forced to leave his job due to a sudden deterioration in his health, including the onset of sudden prolonged periods of loss of consciousness. That's concerning. The aircraft commander died within a few months. What? The cause of death was listed as cancer, an injury to the organisms as a result of radiation from an unidentified flying object. Wait, what? The cause of death was listed as cancer, and injury, quote, injury to the organisms as a result of radiation from an unidentified flying object was listed as a contributing factor on the official medical record in the hospital where the commander died, according to Listratov. Well, Listratov is definitely a guy I would like to talk to, but I don't speak Russian. And I don't even know if he's still alive. Listratov told another agency that about 95% of UFO sightings could be explained. So we go to 90 to now to 95. And investigations have often revealed them to be burned out rocket stages or the remnants of unsuccessful rocket launches. Okay. It is the 5% that cannot be explained that is causing all the commotion among the Soviet scientists and military personnel. Absolutely. Instead of the widespread skepticism that he had expected when he first began to interview military personnel, he noted that officers and soldiers had told him about their own encounters with UFOs, and they had even shown him reports that had been completely filled out on official forms. Boy, that sounds familiar. We hear a lot of that just in this area, and even at the UFO hearings, we've heard about that quite a bit here in the United States. Let me see. October 7th reported that the Soviet Union had just opened an official center for the study of UFOs in Moscow. Physicists, geologists, astronomers, and psychologists are teaching courses on the various characteristics of the UFOs that have been reported and the types of equipment necessary to investigate UFO sightings. Let's see, on 9 October, The Soviet news agency TASS reported that a UFO had landed in a park in the city of Voronezh. TASS reported that the object had been observed by many witnesses before it left. 12 October, there was a report that a group of scientists had visited a field in Perm Oblast to investigate claims that a UFO had landed in that area and had left behind a circular impression measuring 62 meters in diameter. Let's see. Report on 13 October suggested that mass hysteria may be an important factor contributing to the recent outburst of widespread claims of encounters with UFOs in the USSR. According to the paper, many elements of the Soviet media were fanning this phenomenon, which it compared to the hysteria resulting from Orson Welles' radio broadcasts in 1938 about an invasion of the United States by extraterrestrials. Okay. The 1925 October issue of POISK carried an article contrasting the viewpoints of scientists from the two main Soviet institutes presently engaged in investigating UFO reports. The newly established Center for UFO Studies in the Palace of Culture of Power Engineers in Moscow and the Terrestrial Magnesium, Ionosphere, and Radio Wave Propagation Institute. That is a mouthful, which has branches in Troitsk, Leningrad, and Irkutsk. Physicist Yuri Platov of the Terrestrial Magnesium Institute does not believe the claims of scientists who maintain they have found remnants in Delagorsk of a UFO constructed by extraterrestrials, and he is convinced that the materials found at the site are really only the remnants of unsuccessful launch of a Soviet rocket in that region. He believes that many of the other reports of UFOs can be explained by the inability of the observers to recognize the phenomenon as ball lightning. Oh boy, ball lightning. Here we go. That is an interesting phenomenon. Not sure that's what these folks are referring to, however. That article contrasted Platov's view with that of another physical scientist, Vladimir Zily, who was recently elected chairman of the new All-Union Commission for the Study of Unidentified Flying Objects of the Union of Scientific and Engineering Societies. Azaza compared reports of a UFO crash in USSR with a claim by UFO enthusiasts in the United States that a UFO had crashed in the desert near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. He believes there is sufficient evidence to support the claim of UFO crashes in both cases. And in the Roswell case, he cited the testimony of eyewitnesses who maintained that they had seen the bodies of 4 extraterrestrials landing near the smashed spacecraft. According to Platov, however, the eyewitnesses in the Roswell space case were mistaken. He believes that the object that crashed was an experimental rocket with 4 rhesus monkeys aboard, and that the accident was the result of an unsuccessful launch attempt at the dawn of the space era. That's a new one. I haven't heard that one yet about the monkeys. I've heard the weather balloon, like the rest of us, but not the monkeys. Hundreds of residents had reported observing a UFO in Omsk. Many of these eyewitnesses reported the sighting directly to the paper's office in Omsk. The article included a report by an authoritative military officer, Major Laganov, who stated, "I must tell you straight off that radar did not detect this object. And so I am reporting visual observations. The object was passing over at an altitude of several kilometers. The visible shining sphere appeared to be about 1.5 times as large as the moon's shape in the night sky. 4 projectors, some parallel and some at angles to the Earth, were casting very bright beams. The object was in the field of vision for about 5 minutes, hovering over the civil airport before descending a little. Then the projectors were turned off, and a whirling plume trail instantaneously appeared around this shining sphere. The object began to recede rapidly in a direction from the northwest to the east at the same time that flights were being carried out from a neighboring airport. Pilots were able to observe it visually, but they could not detect it on their radar screens. Radar signals could not be reflected from it. This object was immediately reported up the chain of command, and our colleagues in the Alte Cray and the area toward which the object flew reported back to us within 5 minutes that they had it under visual observation. That meant that it had covered a distance of approximately 600 kilometers at a speed of about 7,000 kilometers per mile. That's fast, folks. According to Lognov, all observations indicated that the object was a UFO, being controlled by some kind of intelligence, and that it was not merely some kind of anomalous atmospheric phenomenon. Okay, so this talks about a conference of about 100 Soviet scientists representing the various branches of science and technology. The main topic of discussion was the multitude of claims of recent UFO sightings in the USSR. And according to the article, more questions about UFOs were raised at this conference than were actually answered. That sounds familiar. Of 1 November, an article reported that Voronezh, where some observers had claimed to have witnessed the landing and takeoff of a UFO, has become the place where a pilgrimage by correspondence seeking sensational news for the newspapers, regardless of the controversial nature of the so-called weighty evidence being presented as proof that extraterrestrials had visited Voronezh. And that's the end of that document. Okay, so there's some interesting stuff in there. Nothing too shocking. I mean, a lot of kind of similar reports to what we get in the United States. But nothing that, really is too shocking. There's definitely some interesting information, but nothing that's too shocking. Now, I keep saying the word shocking because obviously I'm leading up to something here, because this new page that came out, this is the one I wanted you to stick around for. I'm going to go ahead and share this page here. This report here is pretty shocking. This is apparently there was a 250-page document. I'm still scraping the hollows of the internet to find that, but I did want to get this out right away. Because this is just, it's really hard to believe what I was reading when I was reading this. So I'm going to read this word for word here from the document. Again, this is from the CIA, who received it from most likely Russian intelligence. So take it for what it is. It's not a 100% fact that this event happened. However, it was important enough that the CIA wanted to acquire it and actually made some interesting comments about it. Okay, so here we go. Reprint from the newspaper Chernobyl, can't pronounce it. Cosmic Revenge, first paragraph published in boldface. After Mikhail Gorbachev dissolved in 1991, the KGB Top Secret Intelligence Administration, a lot of material from that department found their way abroad, in particular to the CIA. As reported by the authoritative magazine Canadian Weekly World News, U.S. intelligence obtained a 250-page file on the attack by a UFO on a military unit in Siberia. The file contains not only many documentary case. That took place in Canada. You may have heard about this. I just wanted to share this and make sure that my subscribers got the opportunity to see this actual video because it is pretty amazing. I can't vouch for it. I can't say whether it's AI or not, but it's pretty fascinating stuff. And it seems to be kind of making the rounds on social media and even some major news outlets. You tell me what you think down in the comments after watching the video. What do you think? I mean, it's so hard to tell these days with AI and everything. They did have multiple angles, which, quite frankly, I don't know if that lends it credibility or not anymore these days. But they did have a lot of different videos, a lot of different camera angles, a lot of different folks seeing the same thing. And it is kind of making the rounds on Twitter. I picked out a couple of the videos, but if you go there yourself, you can find just tons and tons of these videos of this phenomena they saw in the sky. What could it be? I don't know. I don't know if it's UAP, UFO, or just natural, some kind of natural light phenomena. It doesn't look natural. I'll tell you that. It definitely looks like there's some kind of intelligence to it. Pretty fascinating stuff. So tell me what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you want more updates like this. Thank you for sticking around and checking out this new update from Living Umpqua, the UAP UFO rabbit hole. I will see y'all next time.